Missing persons aren't really a new thing. As a matter of fact, an average is usually over 500,000 people, and that's in just the US alone. Last year, in 2019, it was actually lower than it usually was, and it was at least over 600,000 people that were investigated as missing person cases. So it's not hard to see that you're going to have some cases that are a little bit more baffling than others. Here are some cases of missing people, some of them who ended up being found, and others who weren't. A cryptic phone call was given just before the unexplained disappearance happened. For instance, take the case of William Hurley. On October 8th, 2009, Hurley attended a Bruins game with his friend. After the first period, he suddenly complained that he was tired from work and that he wanted his girlfriend to come pick him up and to take him home. After leaving the stadium, he called up his girlfriend Claire and he responded, "I'm not 100% sure where I am." After which a person walked up behind him and you could hear him say, "You're at 99 Nashwood Street." Shortly after that, Hurley told his girlfriend that his battery was running low and it was about to die. When she came up to the spot where he said he was nowhere to be seen. She asked around and no one said they saw him. What was so bizarre about this was that when they got done with the call, she turned the corner where he was. That was within seconds of them ending the call. After notifying the police, they searched the area, but only found one chilling clue: Hurley's cell phone. It was found smashed to pieces. They were able to identify it by its serial number, but no other evidence was found. On October 14th, Hurley's body was found. It was in the Charles River. He had cash on him, no visual signs of injury. Foul play and mugging was ruled out, but it still remained a mystery. What really happened to him? And how did he get out of sight so quickly? Why would he want to? With William Hurley dead, we'll probably never know the answer. June 12, 2005, Todd Gieb was attending a bonfire party at an apple orchard in Casanova, Michigan. It was located about 1.5 miles from where he lived with his cousin. It was in the early morning hours. He left the party and told everyone he was going to walk back. No one really thought much about this, since he was very familiar with the area, and it really wasn't that far to walk. At around 12:47 a.m. to 12:57, he made a series of phone calls, and they were a bit odd to say the least. He simply made short phone calls saying stuff like, "I've had enough." In another one, he simply said, "I'm in a field," before the phone went dead. The concerned friend called back, and it was picked up, but all she could hear was the sound of heavy breathing and rushing wind, and then it cut out again. According to the reports, the phone was not used again, and there was no further calls that went through. There was a massive search, which included around 1,500 people, police and volunteers. They also used aircraft. They scoured the orchard and the party site, and even the stretch of road that he was expected to be walking. They did this at least 3 times, thoroughly. It just seemed like Todd vanished off the face of the earth. Then on July 2nd, 2005, 3 weeks after he gone missing, his body was found. But it was very odd for several reasons. His body was found in a pond. This was a place that was searched multiple times. As a matter of fact, the body was discovered standing upright in the water, with his head and shoulders breaking the surface, almost like a fishing bobber. As most people would know, that is very unusual. They conducted an autopsy on his body and found that he had no exterior injuries, and his blood alcohol content was really low, which ruled out an accidental drowning by the influence of alcohol. They did close the case as an accidental drowning, though there were some who didn't buy into the official ruling. His family questioned why he would suddenly decide to take a swim in a pond while fully clothed. They had an independent investigation by a pathologist, and they found by careful analysis that he'd only been dead for 2 to 5 days, him being gone for 3 weeks. And it was also determined that he had no water in his lungs, so that ruled out drowning. This strongly pointed to the possibility that he was murdered, but the police never reopened the case. 31-year-old Henry McCabe went missing after coming out of a nightclub in Spring Lake Park. It was September 7th. His wife, Corrine, was visiting California at the time. After returning, she received an unsettling voicemail. The voicemail featured 2 minutes of strange, unintelligible moans, groans, screams, and growls. At one point, you can hear him say that he was shot, and also saying, "Stop it." Then after that, it cut out. You can still find the recordings online. Though it's not the full recordings, it's still quite disturbing to listen to and kind of makes you wonder what really happened. The last person to see him alive was a friend. His friend claimed that he dropped him off at a local gas station. This was near the club that they went to. Police and volunteers thoroughly searched the area, but they saw no signs of him. But the final call, it was determined to be somewhere else that was in a total different area. It was located in the Rice Creek Park near New Brighton. They searched the area, but no new evidence. However, on November 4th, 2015, his body was discovered floating in Rush Lake. According to the autopsy, they concluded that he drowned. It's unclear how he ended up in the lake, and if there was any foul play. Considering that he said he was shot, in the phone recording you would think that he would have some gunshot wounds, or signs of violence inflicted upon him. Those growls and the moans of pain suggested it, but when they looked at his body, it had no signs of trauma. A 911 operator received a call. They worked in a pretty large town, and it had woods all around. When they got the call, a young man identified himself as 21. He said he was hiking with his best friends in the woods, and then things got weird. Frantically, he told them where he thought his location was, which was approximately 50 miles from the nearest trailhead, but in the wrong direction. When asked to tell what the problem was, the man burst into tears. He said one moment he was with his friend, who was in front of him, and the next minute he was gone. They dispatched a sheriff to go find him, but they were later told that neither the man who gave the call nor his friend were ever found. One 911 operator received a call from an elderly lady. She was having trouble breathing. Now, this woman called in quite a bit, and the dispatcher recognized her voice. Knowing where she lived, they sent an ambulance to her residence. She kept her on the line, trying to keep her calm, while the ambulance was on their way. The ambulance advised that they were only 15 minutes away. This was in a very rural part of Western Virginia. When the dispatcher was talking to her, she asked about her husband and how he was doing, and just making small talk with her. The ambulance calls in that they made it to the scene, and the dispatcher told them that she was in severe respiratory distress and still had her on the line. She let the elderly woman know that the ambulance was coming and that they were at the door to answer it. So the woman said okay and hung up the phone. It seems like a pretty cut and dry case, right? Now this is the part where it gets weird. The EMT and the paramedic, who were on the scene, they called back a few minutes later, and they said that no one answered the door. They confirmed the address, and since the woman was in respiratory distress, they was afraid that she probably collapsed before reaching the door. So they were advised to breach the door so that they could assist the elderly patient. But 5 minutes go by, and the paramedics on the scene radio back. They ask to speak to the supervisor on the shift. They get him, and the supervisor confirms the information, the address, and the female caller. Apparently, the elderly female had been dead for a while. The dispatcher said she's already in full rigor mortis. They thought they had the wrong caller, but the address and the individual was confirmed. There was a string of strange calls in Pittsburgh. They were getting recordings of crying babies and children calling out for help immediately outside of people's homes. The majority of the people targeted were college students. They failed to secure any source of recordings. Upon arriving on the scene, the police warned people to keep their doors shut and call 911 immediately. So what was these strange noises? Was it recordings to try to lure people outside of their home and steal their stuff? Was it just an elaborate prank, kind of similar to the incident with the clowns? We don't know. But if you heard a baby crying outside of your house or a child asking for help outside in the middle of the night, would you go out there? Thank you very much for joining me for this edition of The Creeper. I thought it was interesting, all these incidents of phone calls that led to strange cases. Some of them can easily be explained, and usually the easiest answer is the correct answer, but we really don't know. But one thing I am for sure of, we do live in a strange world, and strange things do happen. As to what they are, I don't know. Maybe one day we'll find out. But until then, we're left to wonder. Well, my voice is a little more scratchy than usual, mainly because I just got off of being sick. My throat still hurts a little bit, but I still wanted to get something out. I've got the Neckbeard Experience. It's a compilation. It's about Skunkbeard. This is a quintessential neckbeard. He is almost like an alpha beard. When you see what he does and says, it is really sickening. I'm glad he's where he belongs. You'll find out when you hear it. And I hope I did the story some justice. And I hope you guys enjoy that. So until next time, this is Dallas, signing off.